Good evening to everyone present here. This is Megha Patel, team member of Kash Foundation. I heartily welcome you all to the 10th medical webinar of Kash Foundation under Kash Swasthya Manthan in collaboration with Matushri Gomati Hospital. Under its health vertical, Kash Foundation in association with Mumbai and Vidyapeeth organized a free naturopathy medical camp on 16th November 2019. It was supported by Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, and International Naturopathy Organization. Kash Foundation organized the first and second medical webinar on the 21st and 23rd of May respectively on health precautions to be followed after lockdown. The speaker for these webinars were Dr. Parag Mehta, Dr. Jitendra Arya, Dr. Sushant, and Dr. Suryahan Dongre. The third medical webinar was conducted on the 5th of June on how to build physical and mental immunity. The speaker for the session was Dr. Renuka Vyas. On the eve of International Day of Yoga, Kash Foundation's Kash Swasthya Manthan and Kaivalyadhama Mumbai organized a 3-day medical webinar series on 19th, 20th, and 21st of June 2020. The speaker for the fourth medical webinar was Dr. Jawahar Mehta, who spoke on yoga, psychology, and psychiatry on 19th June. Sri Raviji Dikshit was the speaker for the fifth health event of 20th June. He gave a speech on yoga and lifestyle. On 21st of June, Dr. Apurva Shenoy spoke on yoga and diet as the speakers for the sixth webinars. On the 9th July, we conducted 7th medical webinar in which Dr. Jyoti Kumbhar was a speaker who spoke on role of naturopathy and yoga on women's health. On 10th July, we had our 8th medical webinar in which Dr. Roshan Amal from NIN was a speaker who spoke on effect of emotion on health. On 26th July, we had our 9th medical webinar for which Narsima Kamath was the speaker and spoke on the amazing healing powers of nature. Now today, I once again welcome you all to the 10th medical webinar under Kash Foundation's Kash Swasthya Manthan in collaboration with Matushri Gomati Hospital. Now I would like to request our founder trustee, Dr. Afkash Jadhav, to give us introduction about Kash Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. I am quite pleased to know the theme for today, and it is not only an essential theme but also a very vital component when we look at the motherhood. As per the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, motherhood is something which we all need to nurture, cherish, and also protect. So at Kash Foundation, we work on four verticals: education, environment, health, and heritage. The foundation came up in October 2019, and since then we've been engaged in various activities which somewhere try to look at the aspects of societal changes, which looks at the aspects where we can become the catalyst of change, which also tries to engage in aspects of humanity. Kash Swasthya Manthan is an allied body of Kash Foundation, and we are really happy to share with you that in the span of 5 to 6 months, we have managed to make an indelible mark in the area of medical as such and the health sector. We've been looking at having various speakers and organizations to associate with us, so we reach out to people in maximum way. The kind of uncertainty which prevails today definitely demands us to not only be alert regarding our health, but also look at our mental stability as well. So with Kash Swasthya Manthan, we try to work on these aspects where we try to touch upon the topics which grow us, perhaps every day, or which grow us once in lifetime. And we want to create a healthy society. A healthy society definitely will lead to a healthy nation, and a healthy nation will lead to a healthy global atmosphere. So, on behalf of Kash Foundation, I welcome Dr. Kritika, and we really thank you for your time, for your efforts, and for taking up a very essential topic for that matter, which is anyway declared by UNICEF as the theme for that matter. At Kash Swasthya Manthan, we are also looking at engaging in the research components. In the due course, we would very soon be launching Kash Swasthya Manthan journal, and we would expect scholars and doctors like Dr. Kritika to also contribute in the similar manner, the way they have honored us with their presence today. I wish the team, Dr. Chintan and Dr. Renuka Vyas, good luck for this endeavor, and their efforts have really been immense, and they have been consistent in taking up this mission quite ahead. So, with all the good wishes, I hand over back to Megha Patel.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Renuka Vyas, the Joint Director of Kash Swasthya Manthan, to give introduction about Kash Swasthya Manthan.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kash Foundation's Kash Swasthya Manthan. Kash Swasthya Manthan is a vertical of Kash Foundation which provides services to the society in various fields. Kash Swasthya Manthan is actively involved for the benefits and self-development of each and every individual of the society, whether it is poor, middle class, or rich. Its main aim is to provide and promote the best and easiest affordable services in the field of nature cure for eradication of various ailments without medicines, but with the help of Mother Nature. Kash Swasthya Manthan is a group of dedicated and sincere professionals of the fields of allopathy, naturopathy, homeopathy, Ayurveda, and alternative therapies, wherein to fulfill the dream, they work selflessly and happily with only expectations of healthy and happy society. As you all know that today we are here with our 10th medical webinar, and on this occasion I would like to announce that we are coming up with our 5 days health webinar series on Be Your Own Healer, Learn Naturopathy and Ayurveda. So book your following dates with us, which are from 7th September to 11th September by 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. We will update our details soon on our foundation website. Thank you so much, everyone. Over to you, Megha.
Now, I would like to invite our program coordinator, Dr. Jintan Jadia, MBBS, MS Ortho, Assistant Professor Orthopedics at Sion Hospital, and our member of Kash Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. Today's topic for the medical webinar is on breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, as we all know, is the perfect start to a newborn's life. Its benefits extend way beyond nutrition. It is the best way to develop a good mother-child bond and to promote a neonate's health and immunity. So breastfeeding is a very natural process. Women often encounter difficulties, most of which can be addressed by simple counseling. The first week of August is observed as the World Breastfeeding Week by WHO and UNICEF. And this year's theme is Promote Breastfeeding for a Healthier Planet. And we at Kash Swasthya Manthan couldn't agree more to it. To enlighten our viewers regarding breastfeeding, we have a very special guest speaker with us today, Dr. Kritika Tiwari. Dr. Tiwari has been trained by some of the leading pediatricians of the country. After completing her pediatric residency, she undertook training programs in Canada and Boston. Currently, she is consulting at the Matushri Gomti Hospital in Mumbai and specializes in adolescent health. She is also the founder member of the Indian wing of the International Adolescent Eating Disorders Organization. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Kritika Tiwari on her talks on breastfeeding essentials. But before we could go ahead with the talk, let me just make a small announcement for all our speakers. If you all have any questions regarding our webinar today, you all can post it on our chat box. And for all of our viewers on YouTube, you all can post your questions in the link below. We will be glad to answer all your questions in due course of time. Thank you. Over to Megha. Dr. Kritika, you're online.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan. They say a newborn baby requires three things: nutrition, warmth, and a sense of security. Breastfeeding provides all three. A big thank you to all of you for joining us today as we celebrate the World Breastfeeding Week. Infant and young child nutrition, or the nutrition of a baby, is crucial not only to decrease the childhood illnesses and death, but also to help every child reach optimal physical and mental potential as an adult. This in turn has a direct impact on the performance of the society as a whole. The United Nations has come up with the concept of the first 1,000 days of a child's life. This includes the 270 days of pregnancy, 365 days of the first year, and 365 days of the second year of a child's life. This is the period where providing optimal nutrition has maximum impact on the child's future health. This is because it is during this period that brain development is at its maximum, alongside the development of all other organs of the body. Hence, it offers us a critical window of opportunity to ensure and shape the child's nutrition. During these 1,000 days, breastfeeding constitutes a very essential part of the child's nutrition, alongside maternal nutrition and complementary feeding. So why is there a hue and cry about breastfeeding? It is the most natural method of feeding. It is also tailor-made for the child and is species specific. What we mean by species specific is that the milk that is produced by a human mother is appropriate for a human baby, whereas the milk produced by a cow is appropriate in the contents and the composition for the calf. Let me start by explaining the structure of the breast to you a little. This is the nipple area. From the nipple area, around it is the area that we call the areola. The areola is the darkened region around the nipple. From the nipple, there are ducts and ductules that go on to these grape-like structures that are known as the alveoli. This is where the milk is stored. The milk collects in the alveoli, and through the ducts, it goes and pools around the areola and out from the nipple. So what is the mechanism of release of milk? When the baby suckles on the nipple, there are sensory nerves all around it. These nerves send signals to the brain. The brain, upon receiving these signals, stimulates the secretions of two main hormones involved in the production and release of milk, which are known as the prolactin and the oxytocin. The prolactin, upon release, stimulates the glands of the breast for milk production in the alveoli. The milk collects in the alveoli. The suckling of the baby also stimulates the release of the hormone oxytocin. This hormone contracts the muscles around the areola and ensures milk let down or milk ejection. All this is held in a positive feedback loop, which means the stimulus gives a positive stimulus to the brain and ensuring the release of the hormones. So the prolactin reflex is stimulated by sucking of the baby that we just saw, emptying of the breasts, milk expression, and frequent feeds. However, it is inhibited by bottles and pacifiers because the baby, when sucking on the bottle or the pacifier, reduces the sucking time on the breast. Prelactal feeds. What do we mean by prelactal feeds? These are the feeds that are given just before starting of breastfeeding, just as soon as the baby is born. Some cultures give honey, some people give ghee or dates to the children. Incorrect positioning can also inhibit prolactin reflex. Painful breasts also hinder the reflex. As for the oxytocin release or the milk letdown, the most positive stimuli are loving thoughts of the baby, sight and sound of the baby, and most importantly, the confidence and belief of the mother that she can breastfeed her child well. As we saw that the brain has a very important role to play in the milk letdown. So any kind of stress or worry or self-doubt can inhibit the oxytocin release. Let me tell you about the types of breast milk now. The first kind of milk that comes out from the breast during the first 3 to 4 days is a thick yellowy liquid that is very small in quantity but very rich in protein and antibodies. Antibodies are those things that help build the immunity of the child. Colostrum is very, very essential because the child, just upon coming out from the mother's womb, does not have any immunity of its own. Colostrum provides all that immunity that is required to reduce the infection rate. It is not to be discarded. Many cultural practices promote the discarding of colostrum because they believe that the colostrum is very heavy and not digested by the baby. Following the colostrum, we get the transition milk for the first 1 to 2 weeks. The transition milk is richer in fats and sugars. This is followed by production of mature milk. Mature milk is thinner, more watery, but it has all the essential nutrients that are required by the baby. This mature milk is of 2 types, the foremilk and the hind milk. Foremilk is the milk that is secreted at the beginning of the feed. It is watery, rich in proteins, sugars, vitamins, minerals, and water. This is the milk that satisfies the thirst of the baby. Hind milk is what comes after the foremilk, later on during the feeding. It is more rich in fat and provides more energy. This is the milk that satisfies the hunger of the child. Now imagine if you are hungry and it is your lunchtime and I give you, say, about 1.5 liters of water to drink. You will be satisfied for a little while, but as soon as the water washes out, you would be hungry again. The same thing happens with the babies. If we give them 5 minutes of feeding on one breast and then shift to the other breast, and the baby will only get foremilk, this will satisfy the thirst of the baby and he'll be quiet for about 20 to 25 minutes and then start demanding feeds again in half an hour. It is therefore very important to feed the babies from both sides, but only after emptying of the first side. Emptying of one breast takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but it can vary. And usually the child will leave the breast on his own before shifting to the other one. If your child feeds only for 15-20 minutes as a whole, you do not need to worry. Just feed on one side, and while feeding the next time, you can use the other side. Benefits of breastfeeding are long and numerous. For the baby, it provides complete nutrition. Nothing else can provide complete nutrition to the baby in the first 6 months of its life. It offers protection from infections like diarrhea, pneumonia, respiratory complaints, ear infections. Also, it protects the child from developing allergies and asthma later on in life. Breast milk also offers protection from diseases like diabetes, Crohn's disease, or obesity, which may set in later on in childhood or during adulthood. It also satisfies the emotional needs of the baby. Breast milk contains some enzymes, which are basically proteins that help in digestion of the milk. And hence, it is the most easily digestible food item that the baby can have. Coming to the mother's benefit, the mother will experience a greater mother-child bond while breastfeeding. Very importantly, breastfeeding protects the mother from illnesses like cancers, breast cancer and uterine cancers. It reduces heart diseases in the mother. Breastfeeding has also been known to decrease the chances of developing postpartum depression, which is the feeling of depression immediately after delivery. Of course, it is convenient. You don't need to get into the hassle of sterilizing the bottles or making sure the water is at correct temperature to make the top feeds. It is cheap, and also it helps regain the pre-pregnancy weight. So let us go through the steps of establishing successful breastfeeding. First of all, when you start breastfeeding, the answer is as soon as possible. The first hour after birth is known as the golden hour. This is the time when the child is most vulnerable, and giving breastfeeding here will prepare the child for the outside environment. However, having said that, if you're unable to start breastfeeding within the first hour, it's all right. It's not that the breastfeeding cannot be established later on, but the sooner you start it, the better it is for the child and the mother. How do you prepare a mother for breastfeeding? Providing motivation and emotional support is very important. You need to make sure that the mother is sitting comfortably and is relaxed. Any kind of stress would hamper the feeding. This is the time, actually, antenatally, when you check for flat or inverted nipple, and if any of these are present, we'll be talking more about them later on. Before the breastfeeding is started, that this needs to be addressed. How do you begin? First and foremost, you need to ensure the baby is well supported. The mother needs to be comfortable, but so does the baby. The head of the baby should be in line with the body, and the baby should be facing the mother. Support the breast with one finger, and the thumb should be above the areola. This is how the breast should be supported from the free hand. Touch the nipple to the baby's mouth. As soon as the baby opens the mouth wide, insert the whole nipple as well as the areola inside the baby's mouth with the nipple pointing towards the palate. Let's talk about the positions of feeding the baby. The most common ones are the cradle and the cross cradle hold. As you can see in the cradle hold, the child is supported by the mother by the hand which is on the same side as the breast from which she is feeding. The head of the baby is to rest in the elbow of the mother, and the hand is going to support the buttocks of the baby. The other hand is going to hold the nipple and support the breast in the manner I explained earlier. Cross-cradle hold is when the baby is supported by the hand which is on the opposite hand to which the baby is to the side the baby is feeding from. As you notice in all these positions, the mother's tummy is touching the baby's tummy, the baby is facing the mother, and the child is well supported and is in one line. Other feedings positions are lying on the side, football hold in which the baby is taken from behind but is again well supported, and a laid back. This is the most natural form of feeding, the laid back form. Coming to the latching. What is latching? Latching is how the baby holds the mother's nipple and sucks on it. It is extremely important to ensure that the latching is good and the attachment is good, because incomplete or poor attachment can cause problems like sore nipples and engorgement. So what are the signs of good attachment? If you see here, the areola above the baby's mouth should be more visible than below it. The baby's lower lip should be turned outwards. The mouth should be open nice and wide. And the chin of the baby should be touching the mother's breast. Over here, as you can see, the baby is sucking only on the nipple and not the part of the areola is not inside the baby's mouth. the chin is not touching the breast, and the mouth is not wide open. These are signs of poor attachment. Coming to a very important part, that is the frequency of feeding. How often do you need to feed the baby? We have moved from the earlier concept of feeding on demand to now what is called responsive feeding. Responsive feeding basically means that the mother is responsive to the child's cues. Every child provides hunger cues. We'll be coming to what those are very soon. 8 to 12 feeds per day in a period of 24 hours is usually adequate. But what is most important to note and remember is that every baby is different and nothing is fixed. By every baby is different, I mean, I might want 1 chapati every 4 hours and somebody else might want to eat 4 chapatis, but have it, just twice a day. Similarly, every child is different. Some children feed for 10 to 20 minutes. Some children feed for half an hour also, and that's all right. Nothing is fixed. Your baby might have a feeding pattern which might change over a course of time. You're not to worry about that. Coming to the hunger cues, these are divided into early cues, mid cues, and late cues. The early cues basically say that I'm hungry. These include stirring by the baby, mouth opening, and the baby will start turning the head side to side, looking for the breast, looking to root. By root, we mean going towards the breast and holding on to it. These are the early signs. The mid cues would be when the baby is really hungry now. He'll start moving a lot more, stretching, and putting the hand into the mouth. Baby feed, then you get the cue. Crying, agitated movements, and the baby will go red. This is when you need to calm down the baby first and then attempt to latch. How do you assess if how you're feeding is adequate for the baby or not? Usually, a well-fed baby will be very contented and will sleep peacefully. Passing of urine 6 to 8 times during the day and watery stools, bright yellow watery stools about 6 to 8 times in a day are signs of adequate feeding. Also, very important is to ensure adequate weight gain. It's somewhere around 15 to 30 grams per day, but your pediatrician will be able to keep a record of that better. Please remember, you squeeze the breast and feel that not enough milk is coming out does not mean that your feeding is not adequate. Like we said before, the sucking of the baby is what stimulates the letdown of the milk and not just squeezing. Coming to maternal diet, I often come across many questions regarding the diet that the mother should follow during breastfeeding. What is most appropriate is having a healthy, balanced diet. A mother who's lactating requires about 500 extra kilocalories and 1 gram extra of protein compared to what she required pre-pregnancy. The next point to be remembered is no food products are to be avoided. You can eat whatever you like. It can be spicy, it can be bland, whatever is the flavor that you've been having pre-pregnancy. You don't need to avoid anything. If you feel that your baby has reacted to something which you've had in the past 2 to 12 hours, you can observe when you have it the next time and consult your pediatrician or your lactation specialist. There are certain things the babies can be allergic to, but you will show clear-cut signs. Anything that you eat is not, it's very unlikely that it's going to cause the baby to be gassy. So please don't avoid food products based on mix. Caffeine content is passed on to the breast milk, but it is very less than 1% of the caffeine that the mother consumes is actually passed on into the breast milk. That is why we say that 1 to 2 cups of tea or coffee or caffeine in any other form is all right for the baby. There can be situations in which the caffeine content goes up, which can cause sleeplessness and restlessness in the baby. So you need to be monitoring all of that. Alcohol is secreted in the breast milk and should be avoided. If your baby reacts to a particular food item, you need to consult your pediatrician immediately. Supplementing diets of mother is generally a call that is taken by the gynecologist or the pediatrician. Iron or calcium supplements are usually given up to 3 months and should be taken as prescribed only. Please refrain from taking any protein supplements. They contain preservatives and chemicals. Natural sources of protein are always encouraged. Maintaining adequate hydration is extremely important for the mother to ensure adequate supply of the milk. A little bit about expression of milk. Expression of milk is when you manually take out the milk and store it. It can be done manually or it can be done using pumps. Pumps are also of two types. These are manual pumps and electric pumps. Expressing is okay in any way, whichever you feel comfortable with. I usually suggest trying all three methods and seeing whatever works for you best. If you're trying to express manually, here's what you need to do. First, gently massage the breast, move from starting towards your body and moving away towards the nipple. After you massage for about 1 to 2 minutes, make sure that you hold your breast in the hand. Your fingers and your thumb should be in diagonally opposite directions. Please do not hold the nipple area. You need to hold the breast above the areola. Once you press in this direction, you can move across and keep the fingers holding diagonally, but keep rotating the positions of the breast. When you press, the milk will come out. Expression of milk can be done about 1 hour after you've fed your baby because that would ensure adequate milk remains for the baby for the feed also. How do you store this milk that you have expressed? Preferably in sterilized containers which contain a lid. Steel containers that come with lid are very convenient to use. This milk can be stored at room temperature for about 4 to 5 hours and in refrigeration for 24 hours. If you're keeping the milk in deep freezer, it is good for about 2 weeks. Whenever you need to use the milk, please take it out of the refrigerator or the deep freezer. If you're taking it out of the refrigerator, it's good to just keep it outside for 10 to 15 minutes and let it come to room temperature before you feed the baby. If you're taking it out of the deep freezer, please allow it to thaw either just by keeping it outside or keeping it in a bowl of warm water. Importantly, do not boil or heat the milk that you take out from the fridge or the freezer. Whatever is remaining after the milk has been consumed, once you have thawed it or brought it back to room temperature, please discard it. Coming to some problems that are encountered during breastfeeding. The most common one is cracked or sore nipples. Cracked or sore nipples, as you can see here, are due to improper latching, biting, or oral thrush. By oral thrush, we mean some kind of infection that happens inside the baby's mouth. This can also happen when you try to forcibly remove the baby from the breast. The baby is holding on tight to the breast. The attachment is good. And when you try to pull away from the baby, it can cause cracked or sore nipples. Treatment is ensuring correct positioning and attachment. Application of your own hind milk to your nipples reduces the soreness of the nipples. Provide rest to that nipple for 1 to 2 days if required. But if you're giving the nipple, if you're giving the rest to the nipple, you need to ensure that you're still expressing the milk. Otherwise, your milk will get collected inside the breast. Next is flat or inverted nipples. These are usually and ideally should be diagnosed before delivery when you get a nipple check. And the treatment also should begin then, so that the nipples are ready to feed by the time the baby comes out. If you can see here, this is how the normal nipple looks like. A flat nipple would be this projection is not coming outside. Usually a flat nipple is just manually stretched and rolled out, and after a few days of doing that before each feed, it does not cause problems. Inverted nipples are what causes problems and do not allow breastfeeding adequately. For the inverted nipples, the nipples are drawn out before each feed using a double syringe method in which the syringe is attached to the nipple and it is pulled out. It is a little painful, but just 2 days can show really good results. This is usually done under supervision. I recommend if you have inverted nipples, you should consult your gynecologist or lactational specialist to teach you how to take out your nipple with a syringe each time before feed. Coming to the next problem that is encountered very frequently, that is engorged breast. The most common cause is delaying the first feeds of the child or giving infrequent feeds. What happens is that the milk gets collected in the grape-like structures that we saw, and there is no outlet. So after a point, the storage gets too much and the breast becomes swollen, warm, hard, and painful, like you can see here. Treatment is early and frequent feeding, more like prevention, ensuring correct attachment again. And if you're suffering from a really sore engorged breast, painkillers can help, which are prescribed by your doctor. Expression of milk is of utmost importance because you need to relieve. You can feed with engorged breast, but before the baby can latch, you need to ensure that you express some milk, because during engorgement, the nipple and the areola get stretched. When they're stretched, it is very difficult for the baby to latch on. Hence, expression of milk before each feed is important. Warm compresses can help relieve the pain a little bit. And also the latest is to put cabbage leaves around the breast. They also help in relieving the pain and the swelling. Another important thing that is encountered at times during breastfeeding is breast abscesses. These usually occur when the sore nipples are not treated, the engorged breast persists for a longer time, or if the ducts that you remember that we saw are blocked at any time, leading to a pooling of blood of milk over there, causing infection. In breast abscesses, the breast will be very painful, tender to touch. When you touch, it will be very painful. And the mother will also experience some fever, usually high-grade fever. If you have something like a breast abscess, you need to consult your doctor immediately. Antibiotics, painkillers are prescribed, but in a lot of cases, drainage of pus is what is required. Now I'll be dealing with some common myths concerning breastfeeding. The first one is that small breasts lead to inadequate milk secretion. The size of the breast is not proportional to the secretion of the milk. The size of the breast is usually determined by the fatty tissue, which has nothing to do with the secretion of the milk. The secretory or the glandular tissue is more hormone related. So both these things do not have a connection. Even if you have a small breast size, you can ensure adequate breastfeeding. The second myth is that a crying child means that the milk is inadequate. This is very, very commonly encountered in our practice. Please remember that the baby can cry for 1,000 different reasons. The babies could be feeling hot or feeling cold, or their hand must have hit somewhere, or they must have hit their own eye and it must be paining. It could be that the babies just want to be held and not kept down. There are multiple reasons for babies to cry. Every time the child cries, it does not mean that the child is hungry. This is where the hunger cues are going to help you. If you feel that the baby is crying, but before that the hunger cues were present, it'll tell you that the baby is hungry. You do not need to worry about inadequacy of milk if the signs of adequate feeding, which we discussed earlier, are present, which were the baby is passing urine, sleeping peacefully, and gaining adequate weight. The next myth is that the mothers cannot feed when they're sick, when they're down with a viral infection or any kind of infection. On the contrary, it is recommended to feed your child when you're sick, because what happens is when you get sick, you are trying to, your body is trying to fight the infection and makes something called antibodies against the infection. These antibodies are then passed on to the child, and feeding the child when you're sick can ensure that the child does not catch the same infection. However, it is important to remember that you are to take only prescribed medicines. There are certain medicines that are secreted in the breast milk, and that those are to be avoided. Please avoid any over-the-counter medication and consult your gynecologist, pediatrician, or your physician before taking any kind of medications. The next myth is that breastfeeding is not for working mothers. Working mothers can breastfeed as well as stay-at-home mothers can. It is a little difficult for them because they have to manage work and feeding at the same time, but it is definitely possible. Usually what I recommend is, if you have such a situation, please consult your pediatrician. The pediatrician will chalk out a plan for you, tell you how you can express the milk, store it, give it to the babies. Usually you give a feed before you go to work, you give a feed after you come back from work, and it's only about 1 to 2 feeds that are required in between to be given to the child. And if there's somebody at home who can feed the child using a spoon and a bowl, then stored milk can really help. There are also many workplaces that allow you to express your milk and store them now, and also have caretakers where you can take your baby. The last myth that we come across is usually the elders in the house tell that water is required for the baby during summer because the child becomes dehydrated otherwise. Giving water to the child will fill the child's stomach with water without any kind of nutrition. It also decreases the suckling, and decrease in sucking will lead to a decrease in milk secretion. Giving water to the child will also lead to increased number of infections, especially diarrhea, and in summer months. The baby does not require any kind of supplementation, any supplementary feeds for the first 6 months of life. That is all from my side. Thank you. I'm open to questions now. Over to you, Megha.
Yes, ma'am, you stop sharing your screen. Yeah. So, ma'am, we have some questions like, can a baby fall asleep while nursing? How to ascertain that the baby has finished nursing?
Can the baby go to sleep?
Yeah.
Usually what happens is, if the baby is there, you have to remember that you are not to follow the clock, but you have to follow the baby. At times, mothers, they try and wake up the child in every 2 hours to ensure adequate feeding and do not let the child sleep. If you wake up the child before he's hungry, then the child tends to feed for 5 to 7 minutes and then go off to sleep again. Using responsive feeding is going to decrease that. If you feed the child only when the child is hungry, they're less likely to go to sleep. And how do you ensure that the child is done feeding? The child is going to leave the breast themselves when they are done.
Okay, some more question. Can you simultaneously breast and bottle feed?
Bottle feed. Breastfeeding and bottle feeding are done simultaneously in many places, but what happens is there's something called nipple confusion. It is the nipple of the bottle is very soft, and it also has a hole in it. So it is very easy for the baby to consume milk from a bottle. On the breast, the baby has to do more work for the same thing. This causes nipple confusion. So what happens is the baby will prefer feeding from the bottle more than on the breast, and eventually that can lead to a decrease in the secretion of milk in general. Of course, bottle feeding comes with its own set of side effects, including constipation, multiple infections, dental malformations, and are discouraged, definitely discouraged.
Okay. One more question. Is top feed a good substitute for breastfeeding?
Nothing can replace breast milk. Like I said earlier, breast milk is a complete nutrition for the child during the first 6 months. So I know Top Feed and the companies, they advertise themselves to have all the necessary nutrients, which they can also have. They might have all the vitamins and the minerals that are required. One thing that they cannot provide the baby is immunity. The antibodies that are transferred, the immunity that is transferred from the mother to the child is absent in Top Feeds. Also, breast milk contains about 800 different species of bacteria, of microbes that are required to build that immunity. And there is no Top Feed that can provide that to the baby.
Okay. So, ma'am, are there any contradictions to breastfeeding?
For as far as practical implications are concerned, no. There are very, very, very few diseases, and those are usually congenital inborn diseases in which you do not give breastfeeding, but those are extremely special circumstances. There are no contraindications to breastfeeding unless you're told by your pediatrician.
Okay. Then is it normal for the baby to bite during feeding? What can be done to stop it?
Biting will happen if the attachment or the latching is improper. If we follow the same steps, and if you feel that the child is biting and feeding is becoming painful in any manner, please consult your lactational specialist or the pediatrician. They will assist you in the correct attachment and telling you what's going wrong.
Okay, ma'am. So now I would again like to invite Chintan Jaria, Program Coordinator, for the concluding remarks.
I think, Megha, there's one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it recommended?
Yeah, you can answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it recommended to feed the child in lying position? Yes, you can feed the child in lying down position, the position that I had shown. You have to ensure the same steps. You have to ensure adequate attachment, but the baby should be facing the mother, and the baby should be facing the mother. You need to be very careful when you're doing that. But the tummy of the mother should be in contact with the baby, but it can be done in a side lying position when the mother is lying down on the side. On gripe water. Gripe water is unfortunately a very prevalent practice in our country. What happens with gripe water is that it contains soda bicarbonate. Basically, the pH of gripe water is very different from the pH that is required. It neutralizes the pH inside the baby's body, and it hinders the bacterial growth, the good bacterial growth which is required for optimal digestion and nutrition. So gripe water is certainly not recommended.
Is post-feed reflux a common occurrence? How should it be addressed? Like baby spitting up?
Baby spitting up is a very common occurrence, and usually you do not need to worry about it. Spitting up of normal milk or curded milk is a normal phenomenon. It can occur up to multiple times in a day also. As long as the baby is gaining weight adequately and all the signs of adequate feeding are present, you don't need to worry about it. The only time that you need to consult your pediatrician at the earliest is when the vomit is of red or brown or green color or any other color basically other than white. That is when you need to get in touch with your pediatrician. To combat a little bit of the reflux, you have to ensure adequate burping. Burping should be done after each feed, even at night. Usually we miss out on the night burping. What happens is the baby while feeding takes in a lot of air, and that is why burping needs to be done to take out that air. Burping should be done for about 3 to 5 minutes after every feed. There are different positions. One is just take the baby on your shoulder and ensure that you've cupped your hands and you're moving up. And this should be done for about 3 to 5 minutes. This will lead to reduced reflux and throwing up by the baby.
Okay, one more question. Some moms feel they do not produce adequate milk. Is this fear well founded? Any technique to increase the milk production?
Like I said during my talk, usually mothers experience this when they feel that the baby is crying, that the milk is not adequate, or when they try squeezing their breast themselves and feel that less milk is coming out. Most of the times it is ill-founded, but there could be a genuine reason to it. What you need to do to ensure adequate milk production, there are little things that can be done. One is keeping the baby near you. Like we saw that oxytocin is released more when there are loving thoughts of the baby, the sight and the sound of the baby. So if the baby is close to the mother, it ensures adequate release of the milk. Another thing to ensure is optimum nutrition and hydration, which is very, very important for a lactating mother. In some situations, there might be some medicines which may be required, but those will only be prescribed after your gynecologist or the pediatrician has diagnosed a low milk production.
When should complementary feeds be started? And what is the best way of introducing complementary feeds to the baby?
So complementary feeding is extremely important. It can be started around 4 to 6 months of age, but exclusive breastfeeding, which means giving only breast feeds and nothing else, should be practiced for a period of 6 months. 6 months is the period where the baby does not require anything apart from the breast milk. Complementary feeding should be started after 6 months and is usually 1 to 2 feeds in a day, which occur alongside the breastfeeding. There are few things that we need to remember in complementary feeding, which is that complementary feeds, whenever introduced, have to be in a semi-solid form and not in a liquid form. They need to you need to introduce only one new food item in say 3 days. Another important thing is that the complementary feed should not contain salt up to the age of 1 year and no sugar or sweetening substances up to the age of 2 years. Breastfeeding and complementary feeding go hand in hand. From 6 months to 12 months of age, the amount of complementary feeding increases and the number of breastfeeds go down. This is how it should be from 6 months to 1 year, reaching 1 year when the baby will eat everything that the other family members eat. Breastfeeding can continue even when the complementary feeding has started and even after the age of 1 year. Ideally, it is recommended to keep breastfeeding till 2 years of age, but the minimum period should be around 1 year of age. If there are any special circumstances due to which you cannot feed the baby adequately, you should consult your pediatrician and see if it's okay to stop breastfeeding.
Yes, Chintan, sir, you can take over now.
Are we done with all the FAQs?
Yes.
All right. Just an announcement for the participants. Any more questions that are to be answered?
All questions have been answered, sir. Now you can go for concluding remarks.
All right. On behalf of Kash Swasthya Manthan, I thank Dr. Rita Tiwari for blessing us with this informative webinar. We would also be posting this webinar up on YouTube, and if any more questions that you feel are unanswered, you can drop down your questions there, and we would be more than happy to answer all of them. I thank you, all of our participants, for actively participating with us. It means a lot. I hope all of you all stay safe and good luck.
Before we wind up, I would like to extend our gratitude towards our today's speaker, Dr. Kritika Tiwari, and thank you for being the collaborator for our 10th medical webinar. To all the viewers, you can visit our website www.kashfoundation.org. You can even follow us on Instagram and on feedback. Myself, Megha Patel, team member of Kash Foundation, signing off. Thank you.